Hello and welcome to this episode of Talking to Introverts. You may have noticed that we missed a couple of episodes in May. That was due to illness, and then we've both had a holiday. So we've decided to come back with you there in the flaming month of June, apparently. So I've been led to believe. I can't wait for that to start. And tell you about our holidays. We won't bore you with our illnesses. We'll just tell you about our holidays. So, hi there. I'm Denise Oliver, and I am a grief and loss resilience coach. And my business name is Diva Empowerment. And my co-presenter is Sami Blackford. And recently, she has been overhauling my website. So I'd love you all to go and take a look at her handiwork, and you can see what I do while you're doing that. So, Sami Blackford, say hello.
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 Hello everybody. Nice to be back. I was going to say we're back refreshed and ready to start again, but after the day I've had, I'm not sure I am. Yes, my name is Sami. I'm a brand strategist and website creator. And as Denise said, I like to make websites look not only pretty but powerful. So, if I do say so myself, Denise, I think your new website is much more a representation of you and your wonderfulness than your old one was.
Why, thank you. Right, well, I played around a lot with my old one, so I'm not surprised that it didn't look as good as the one you've created. I mean, you are... I can't remember what you've been described as. What are you, the makeover queen for websites or something? And that's exactly what you've been doing with it. And it does have a better flow when it's got things that work better because of what you've done. So thank you very much for that. So we both had a holiday, and we thought we'd come and chat about our holidays and what we've loved about them and what we didn't. So Sami, where did you go?
I went to Portugal for 2 weeks. And first of all, the fact that we went for 2 weeks was quite something, because my partner in the past has always said, "Why would you go on holiday for 2 weeks?" I'm like, "Because you're away from normal life for 2 weeks. Why would you not?" So it was actually his suggestion, which was surprising. So we went to a few different places in Portugal, up near the Spanish border, kind of central Portugal for a few days, then right down to the coast for a week, and then up to Lisbon for the last few days. And I have to say, I love Portugal. I've never been before, and I love it now.
To the point that you're reading a book about how to live your life in Portugal. How very
I
dare
am. I think pretty much the day I got home, I found a book on Amazon. Other book sellers are available. Yeah, how to move to Portugal. So, new life goal.
Yeah, don't go too soon. But I get it. I get when you go to somewhere and it really gets you,
Mm.
and you're just so surprised, I think, about how much you love a place.
Mm.
What was the temperature like?
It was, I think it was kind of mid to high 20s. Um, when we were down by the coast, we were down on the very bottom peninsular bit, and it was very windy, so it didn't seem as hot, but still easy to get sunburnt, which, you would think I would know after the years of working in the skincare industry, how not to get sunburnt. But honestly, this one day I plastered on so much sun cream so many times. I'm like, oh, I don't understand. How have I still got sunburn? I mean, it wasn't burnt. It was pinker than I would have liked. Um, but I think I've just got that kind of skin.
You're a tender flower, aren't you?
I
Honestly,
have definitely got Northern European skin.
same here. Yeah, very much so. My daughter used to describe her skin and mine as little pink uncooked sausages. So true. Oh, it takes a lot for either of us to go brown, which really annoys her because she is part Maltese. But
Mm,
she would like to be brown. or have the skin that tans a lovely golden brown colour. We have neither of us have got that.
No.
Yeah,
Well, I did think like once the pink had kind of settled down, it's like, oh, I'll have a nice tan now. And obviously I didn't. It's just white again. It's like there's two versions of my skin, whiter than white and pink.
yeah, I'm a lot like that. Unless it's a false tan, and then I'm all right. I can look quite tanned with something out of a bottle on my skin. I haven't got around to doing any of that yet this year. I thought we were in, we got back from, I went to Norway. We got back from Norway, and landed back in this country, and it was summer. I thought we even got the garden furniture out for a weekend. It's like, oh, is it time to do the tanning? Because I do tend to sit in the shade. I'm not one for burning my skin if I can help it. It does happen, but not on purpose. But no, I've got a dress that I had a long frock on a hot weekend, whenever that was when we got back, and that's gone back in the wardrobe. Like, no, I'm sat here in a cardigan. It's like, is it ever going to properly warm up again? Was that it? Have we had
I
some
know. I
in
think
May?
I think Britain's heat wave might be a bit of an extreme term, but warmer weather was while I was away, and I come back into a rainstorm.
Ooh, and hasn't it rained? Good Lord. Was there what if you could bottle what the thing was about Portugal that makes you want to consider living there, what would you say it is?
There was a few things that kind of stand out. So one is like the slower, calmer, less stressed kind of way of life. People, from what I observed, people in Portugal are not worried about having the latest iPhone or, this brand new car or XYZ, whatever it is that we kind of strive for in our country. And I think also there's something about there's still that kind of siesta type, not everywhere, but you can still see like remnants of it. And so that makes the afternoons calmer and also the evenings because like it's not like there's no real rush hour from what I saw, like the end of work and then everybody's home and you've got to feed the children and this, that, and the other. It just seems like things will get done when they get done. It's all good. So that was one of the things. The other thing was the colour. Portuguese are not afraid of colour. So like in Britain and America, particularly, possibly other countries, the whole thing for white interiors or grey interiors, there's none of that going on. There is colour. And then I suppose, this is nothing new for Portugal when you think of the tiles that, Portugal is famous for. And what I loved was it's more in the towns than, out in the countryside. Like whole buildings tiled on the outside with like really quite intricate patterns and light and colors and all of that. I was like, this is amazing. Like I mean, some places in Britain and in Wales, you'll go to like a seaside town and all the houses are different, like pastely colors. So you do get some color in that way in this country, but yeah, it's just on another level in Portugal. I think those are the two main things. How about you with Norway? How
Um,
was your experience?
I loved it. I'm not quite, I sort of thought it's going to look like Scotland, and it sort of does, but it's also its own place. So the bit of Norway we saw was from a cruise ship, a small one. So we sailed from North Shields up near Newcastle, so easy to get to, and we had no problem there going there or coming back, going in the car. Very, very well organised at the port, very simple. Um, a day at sea either side, which my body knew about. And it was very calm. It wasn't like it was even a rough sea, but oof, the seasickness was all in my head. I get like a migraine now. I don't actually vomit. I haven't done that in years and years and years that doesn't happen. And the second we were in a fjord, I knew we were in one because it was even calmer. And everything in my body just calmed right down with it. It's almost bleak in places, so that it can have that greyness that Scotland gets when it's drizzling. And that's what I think reminded me of Scotland. The mountains are phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. They are huge, and there was so much snow still on the top of them. God, it was pretty. Like pretty bleakness. It was incredible. Um, is that one of those things where, for my brain, it just couldn't take in the ginormousness, that's the word, of looking at these earth-made structures. It was so huge. Um, the water was clear, calm, and that would be the word I would say about the whole holiday, how calm it all was. There was such a peacefulness to being on this little ship cruising around these fjords and actually going into the little towns that we went into. The calmness. It was just because it's hardly any people. There's like only 5 million people live in Norway, and I think the population of London's bigger than that. It was like 65 million in this country. Norway's a lot bigger than England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland is. That's for sure. I think the other thing that I was struck by was the space. Once we docked and got off the ship, and we'd go for a walk in the area that we were in, so much space, so much space, and lots of water everywhere. You can fish without a permit anywhere you want. People stand on the side of the road if if there's a tributary or a river going underneath the road. They just stand on the side of the road and fish. It's just like, oh, okay, interesting. And I love that about going to other countries. It's like, how are people living their lives? And like you said about Portugal, the siesta is still a thing. It sort of makes going to another country, that's what's different from here. And Norway, there's so few people, the roads are fantastic. There's so few cars. And some of the roads are are very interesting in terms of their structure. So we did a day on a coach and went to the Atlantic Road, which is made up of 8 different bridges in very close succession. Because a lot of Norway is small islands. And before these roads were built, you got between the islands with your rowing boat if it were more inland, or a sailing boat if you were by the coast. And then these roads have been built, and some of them have the craziest incline up, and then it's like being on a roller coaster because they had to build them in the center of the gap so that the boats could come and go as well, because people don't want to let go of that tradition. And quite right too, I rather liked that everyone was thought of. The other thing about being in Norway is that because of the height of the mountains and when the snow melts, they have these phenomenal waterfalls. So they use that power to generate electricity. So that's the only power source you have in Norway is electricity. So they have a lot of electric cars, so they're big into their pollution. They have a lot of oil. They have a lot of North Sea offshore oil, which is just sold to the rest of the world. And the money they make from that is in a huge pension pot for their elderly population. So you have to worry about your pension. They've taken care of it. And it's just one of those, like, certain things are well thought out. And you know that under the surface, there's got to be stuff that isn't working. But a lot of the stuff, the eco stuff in particular that I saw, I have to applaud them for making the most of what nature is offering them. There used to be a lot of farmers apparently in Norway, but it became unsustainable. And there's certain industries that Norway is known for. So I don't know if you've ever heard, we always called it Jarlsberg cheese. I've always heard people say, but actually the tour guide, Lady Maggie, who took us past the Jarlsberg factory, insisted on calling it Jarlsberg. And I thought, well, she is Norwegian. It's a Norwegian cheese. So maybe Jarlsberg is the thing you say. So I absolutely loved it. I would do it again. It was a Fred Olsen cruise, small ship, as I say. So not luxury at all. We've been on the massive American cruise ships, which are 5 and 6 star luxury cruises. The food was, everything was okay. The thing about cruises is everything is kept spotlessly clean because they worry about cross infection because you're a floating colony, and as such, you could spread bacteria, bugs, viruses very quickly. So everything is scrupulously clean. It's just much smaller. And at first I was a bit concerned because I thought needing quiet space as an introvert, that wouldn't happen on such a small ship. But there were little hidden corners that were great to just settle into a chair, read a book, have a hot chocolate, and just wait to roll into the next place we were going to stop at. All in all, I loved it. Would I live there? No. I mean, I'm an introvert. And then there's a level of being an introvert that is out of my comfort zone. You know, some of the places we went, absolutely beautiful. If you're into the outdoors and walking and climbing and mountaineering, great. I mean, Maggie, the lady who was the tour guide on the Atlantic road trip, her thing that she kept saying was, Norwegians, we love our space. And it's like, yeah, I can see that. You see half a dozen houses along a very long stretch of roads. Like, I wonder how often they speak to their neighbours when it's winter and the snow is on the ground. They're advised to sort their tyres out on their car for 6 months of the year because they can have snow for 6 months of the year. And it's just like, I wonder how how everyone interacts. And that was things they didn't find out about. There were there were things like the clothes shops that we saw in these towns, and there was one place that we had about 5 hours that we hadn't booked any trips. We weren't going up a mountain to do a cable car or anything. So we thought with this town was a bigger one that we'd go for a good look round. And before we left, Pete went to a lecture about the place and was told to watch out for pickpockets because it's a bigger town. Well, you'd have to meet someone first. I'm like, where are the people? Other than the people off the cruise ship, where are the people? And so, yeah, it was an interesting experience. So went looking for shops and there's rarely any. And then the only type of clothing that we came across was outdoor clothing. So, I mean, gorgeous knitted jumpers. There's one that stays in my mind that is like, I wish I'd just brought that back. It was a work of art. Anyway, I didn't. But yeah, and walking shoes and things like that. And it's just like, okay, if you want to buy a frock, where do you get one from? If you want to buy socks, where are they? And things like that were going through my mind. I'm like, where do they buy their underwear from? So, you get the brain gets used to certain signs where you live. So M&S would be my first port of call for things like that. But there's just nothing like that in the place that we went round. So whether their capital, Oslo, I imagine being a much bigger city, do they travel there? I've come home and there's lots of questions like, well, how do you do that? We drove past a school and there's all these kids, but well, where did they buy the school uniform? Where does that come from? Where did they get their school shoes from? Didn't see any of that. I was just like, oh, okay. So it's just like practical everyday stuff. I came home with more questions than I got answers to because I didn't think to ask them while I was there. But other than that, it's a stunning country to look at. And we got a lot of blue sky and white fluffy clouds and sunshine, and did walk a lot because it's at the base of the mountains. It's flat. It's just flat because it's glacial formed.
Mm.
So the glacier has, forged its way through the mountains and created this flat-bottomed U shape. And you can walk for miles, miles and miles and miles. Um, and you can go even further now because, as I say, they built a lot of these bridges that connects bodies of land across water that never used to exist. So everything used to have to be done by boat. And people did used to there used to be like two or three houses on an island, and people very happily lived like that. And we got talking to a lady over lunch on this Atlantic road trip whose mother was Norwegian, and she was called Ingrid as a result, but had a very Surrey accent. It was like, it's that's interesting. And she said her summers were in Norway, and they would go to the island that the grandparents lived on, and basically they had freedom to roam, and we just went out in the morning, came back at night. That was it. And she said it's just one of those things that you don't hear children having these days. And she said, nothing ever happened to us because there was nobody around. We all looked after each other. We all learned to accommodate each other, and food was great, but it was virtually the same every day because you couldn't get supplies. Somebody went to another island that might have a shop on it, and you stocked up once a week, and you did eat fish because you could catch it and cook it. And if grandparents were growing it, you could eat it. If they weren't, you couldn't. And she said no one seemed to mind. We just got on with it. That's just the way it was. To the point that she's like, I've come here. Her husband had died, and she was with a male friend whose wife had died. So the husband and wife who died very close in time, and the four of them had always been friends. And so the bereaved wife Ingrid and her friend John, they came on this holiday together, and basically she wanted to see if she wanted to buy a place roundabout where her grandparents had lived, see if she wanted a holiday home there herself, which she could easily do because she's part Norwegian. And she wasn't sure if she wanted to be so isolated anymore. So I think sometimes the memory of what you had as a child, as an adult, that doesn't quite live up to expectations anymore. No, it was good. I'd highly recommend it. It's only a week, which was nice, so that like there wasn't enough time to get fed up of the food or anything like that, because it's virtually the same food every day. But there's plenty of it. There was always a lot of food to be had. There always is on the cruise. And nothing is too much trouble for anyone to sort out for you if it's in their power to do so. It was a good one. I'd do it again.
I must admit, when you got back and was telling me about it in the couple of days we had before I went on holiday, look, I was online. I was like, "Ooh, let's see this." Denise says it's this good, and it does look amazing. And like the photos I've seen that you've posted online and stuff, it does look amazing. But yeah, interesting, isn't it, that like such a bigger country than the UK, and then nowhere near the same sort of population.
We got talking to people, shop owners who rely on the cruises to keep their businesses
Mm.
going. And one lady was saying how Norway is advertising for people to go and live there because, there are some villages that are just going to die out because there's nobody wants to live there anymore. The younger generation, influenced by social media technology, want to go elsewhere. They want to be in the cities, and they don't want the quiet life and the space of Norway. A shame, really. I think it
Mm.
has a lot to offer, an awful lot to offer. The lady Maggie, who was our tour guide for the Atlantic road trip, we worked out that from what she was saying and her timeline, so she said that on her father's farm, they got their first tractor in 1958, and she was around 10 years old then. So she was in her late 70s. Oh my God. She was slim, really active, brain not a problem. And she'd been brought up on a ton of fish, loads and loads of fish, because they caught it and they air dried it. And she said as the winter went on, the fish was drier and drier and drier, but there was nothing else. You ate it. End of. It's like, yeah, if you catch your own Atlantic salmon and there you are eating it day in, day out with what? Vegetables probably, and not much of anything else, then you are going to have a body that's well oiled, as it were, and you are going to be able to,
Yeah.
your cognitive function is going to be higher. But
Mm.
yeah, she was fab. And her English, like she hardly had any accent at all. It's, in fact, hardly anybody that we spoke to. They all spoke English, didn't matter where we went. And hardly any of them appeared to have a Norwegian accent. It was great.
That was that was something I noticed, that a lot of Portuguese spoke English. Even like the first place we stayed was kind of quite out in the countryside, and yet I think I can only remember one instance when we went to a fuel station because we hired a car and we went to fill up, and when I went in to pay, the guy behind the counter didn't speak English, and that's the only person that I was aware of having that situation with. And like, I don't speak Portuguese by any stretch of the imagination, but I always try to learn like a few, hello, thank you, please, just kind of show willing in a way,
Yeah,
not to be one of those like, I expect you to speak my language, even though we're in your country. And it was interesting how appreciative people were if I'd say like thank you in their language, how even just like one simple word spoken in their native language goes a long way
yeah,
rather than, expecting them to speak English. But with you saying about food, that was interesting for us while we were away because we went self catering. So we found Lidl's are everywhere in Portugal. Lidl's and Aldi, but not Aldi like we know. It's a different logo and branding. Turns out, little like history lesson right now, that Aldi was founded by two brothers and they had an argument and they split the company. So there's two Aldis now. Yeah, so we'd go to the supermarket and get stuff and mostly just ate at home, where we were staying. We did eat out a few times, but what I really liked was like the local markets, because something I would love around here would be like a farmer's market where you can get local fruit, vegetables. We have a local butcher that we use for meat, but like fruit and vegetables is something. And we did this tour of an orange farm, and we were just picking sun-warmed oranges off the trees and eating them. I must admit they were that juicy. I was wearing more than I was eating, I think. I kind of think when I'm home, now that I'm home, it's like, oh, I'll get oranges and I'll juice them myself. I'm like, they won't be the same. They won't be
it won't
just
be
picked off
warm.
the tree.
No, they'll not be warm for a start. That's interesting. I'd forgotten about the supermarket. So the supermarkets that we came across was the Co-op, and
Oh,
I know it's like Co-op in Norway, and one called Bun Pri, Bunnpris. Bun Pri was my preferred one over the Co-ops. They were like cleaner, smarter, better set out, things like that. But and they're small. They're like the ones we get at petrol stations. That's the size of them because there aren't the people. So why would you need a
mm.
huge hypermarket? There aren't the people. Um, and I found Norwegian chocolate, so that was interesting. And I think my favourite part, and I hadn't worked out what it was I was eating, so 70% with almonds and licorice. It was really nice. I was just like
Ooh.
really surprised. Yeah, so it was that looking for things that different to here. Still chocolate, but a
Mm.
Norwegian make of chocolate. And we brought back a cheese that I saw on the internet was recommended you should try. It's called brown cheese. That's his name. And it's a really old,
Doesn't
no,
sound appetizing, I'll be honest.
there's lots of it in the chiller cabinets, big slabs of it or sliced, and we brought it back, and it's still in the fridge because it's an acquired taste, brown cheese, and apparently it was very much the poor man's cheese, but it's become one of Norway's features to try brown cheese. So yeah, so we bought some and brought it back. They talk about trolls. They like to talk about their trolls. Um, this is their thing. So, like Scotland has a Loch Ness monster, Norway has
Ah,
trolls that live
yes.
in the mountains and do their own thing, and they have you can have your picture taken outside a shop that's got one outside, things like that, and you can buy little troll like souvenirs. I didn't bother. So, from the point of view of spending money, we barely spent anything because obviously you paid for all your food on the ship,
Mm.
and they do sort of refreshment packages, but there's mainly alcohol, which I don't drink, and Pete barely drinks any of that, so it's not worth it for us. So we just, if there were speciality on the ship we were on, there's speciality teas. They did a lot of those, and the hot chocolate was all right. It wasn't the darkest, which I prefer, but they had all the alternative milks, and it was a 54% chocolate drink, and it was, palatable. It was okay. It wasn't sweet, sickly Cadbury's, which was,
Mm.
from my point of view, great, really good. And then on days
Um,
where we were traveling a lot, if you walked the deck of the ship 4 times, you'd walked a mile, and it was 2,000 steps. So it was like, okay, let's do that. And so loads of people did that. And they actually had a walking time where anybody that they wanted to let people know that a lot of people would be walking. So 9 a.m. till 10 a.m. was walk the ship time, so that you didn't get mowed down as you walked out on deck, bumping into people all the time. And it was interesting to watch these people walk because you could tell the days it was really windy because everyone had hats on or hoods were up on their coats. And then on warmer days, there was no coats and hoods and hats on. It was like, oh, it looks quite nice out there today. Am I going? And it wasn't warm, but you could go in the pool, which was only little, and there was a couple of outdoor jacuzzis, so people were in them as we. It was quite one of those things where it's like there's someone in a swimming costume in a jacuzzi, and I'm looking at a huge mountain that's covered in snow. You can't quite get your head around the
yeah.
discrepancy of what you can see, and your brain does somersaults trying to fit the two things together.
Going
Interesting.
back to what you were saying earlier about finding like nooks on the ship for personal space and alone time and all of that. The first place we went to, like I say, was out in the countryside. It was quite an interesting setup. It was on a cork farm, which cork farming is just a fascinating thing in itself. I feel like I need to know more about that because they just strip the bark off the trees, and I don't know how the trees don't die. Anyway, that's an aside. And the couple who ran the farm and who let this property that we were staying at, she was from Lisbon and he was Italian, and I don't know how they ended up cork farming in the middle of the countryside. And Rich didn't get that bit when he was nattering with them. I'm like, goodness me, you come back with half a story. I send you out to do like the peopling bit. You're meant to come back with the gossip. So yeah, I thought Rich wouldn't really like that place as much because it was in the middle of nowhere. There wasn't really anybody to talk to or anything. But actually, that was his favorite place, which is quite surprising. And he started reading a book, which as he says himself, he's never read a book before in his life. So I think maybe he's coming round to our ways, Denise.
Wow. Something about you
Slowly but
rubbing off on him.
surely.
How many books did you read? Was it 3?
3.
Yeah, I read 1.5 in a week. So I'm really pleased with that. You read businessy books, didn't you? I read Around
Yeah.
the World in 80 Days, which is one of those classic books that I thought, yeah, I want to read that before I die. And I have done. The book I've got, the version of it I've got, is that there are facts in Around the World in 80 Days that sound, well, they sound like facts and they're almost true. So it's a very interesting thing. So some of the facts in it are actual facts, and other things are just the storyline. But the actual reality behind that information is actually put in the back of the book. So it was good. I would go to Norway again. There was a cruise that took in um, Oslo, so lower end of Norway, some of Sweden, and I'm going to say Denmark. Again, just a week. And most of the people we met on the cruise ship were from the northeast. They all sounded like they were Geordies, and it's so easy for them to go to this little port and get on a boat to go somewhere. And we were in the port, and we were going to the left to get on our ship, and there was these loads of loud, drunken people over to the right. Like, who are these people? Like, they're all part of a party that we haven't been invited to. What's going on over there? And this guy's like, they're off to Amsterdam. It's so easy to get to Amsterdam. It's hen parties. It's all of that. He's like, not sure I'd want to do that. I thought, oh, so you can get to Amsterdam. Don't think I want to be on a ship with them, because it's
No.
obviously the party ship. Okay, I can miss that one. But yeah, it's like,
Oh, honestly, that would be my idea of hell.
I know.
Party boat.
Well,
There's no getting away.
because the place that we went through, to like the customs place, I mean, it's nothing like going through an airport whatsoever. Um, because that was so noisy, I had this moment of, is it going to be really noisy on the ship? Are we just going to have noise all the time? Anyway, you get on the ship and it's not there. So, oh, thank God, they've sailed in the opposite direction to us. Marvelous. I mean, it was
Well,
entertainment and everything. It's there for hours. You
mm,
play bingo, you can do quizzes. There's what were they called? The ship was called the Balmoral. So there was the Balmoral trio with their cello, double bass, guitar, keyboard, I think, and one of them would sing, and they turned up all over the ship. Like, oh, they're here again. Escape the trio. Fine, that's okay.
um, so when we got back from Portugal, we flew into Manchester Airport, and then Rich, because he regularly has calendar meltdowns and he agrees to things before, like checking if there's anything else going on. So before we booked our holiday, had arranged to go to Amsterdam for a few nights with his friend. There was some band playing. They're always off to see bands, those two. So we flew into Manchester. I think we landed about 5-ish, and then at like 8, they were flying out to Amsterdam. So it was just pure luck that it worked out. But he was saying when he got back from Amsterdam that, because we flew with Air Portugal and then he flew with EasyJet to Amsterdam, he was like, EasyJet, completely different clientele. He had fights breaking out on the plane. I mean, like, I have flown EasyJet before and I haven't got to that level of experience, but Air Portugal I would definitely recommend. A lot smaller planes. They're like, like an EasyJet plane, which kind of shrunk down a little bit. There's only 2 seats on either side of the aisle, and shorter, but a really nice airline. And I was talking, so when we booked to go, we booked So we got a carry-on suitcase, a little suitcase, and a backpack or whatever that we could take on the plane within our ticket. Again, something EasyJet doesn't do. And then we booked on my ticket a hold baggage that we'd share the space for. So I got to, because I had a hold bag, I got extra perks, so I could choose my seat. Rich, because he didn't pay for baggage, would have to pay to choose his. So of course he didn't. So going out, there wasn't many on the plane really. It was probably only about half full. So there was a seat spare next to me, so he came and sat with me. And then coming back, there was a seat next to him, but there was a lady sitting next to me, and I was by the window. I was like, oh, I don't want to, like, that I don't want to be one of those people that's like up and down and in and out and all the time. Even though, like, she was always already sitting when I got there. She was like, yeah, if you need to get out anytime, just let me know. But still, But I was talking to her, and she had been, I think she was in her 60s, I'm going to say, and was widowed. And she'd been on a trip, to the Azores, the way she described it was a whale and dolphin research ship. So then I'm like, ooh, tell me more about that. And she was like, oh, it was just a holiday. So I don't know. I never really got to the bottom of what she was actually doing or what she was involved in. But she was saying about, like, when her husband was still alive, they'd go sailing and they did a lot of traveling and all of that. And it was only in the last couple of years, with him having died, that she'd got back into traveling. So it was just interesting to hear, other people's, what other people get up to for their holidays.
Let me just say, do you know what's amazing me? You were speaking to someone on the plane.
I know.
Like, who are you? What happened to you in Portugal?
I know. It was towards the end of the flight. I had been reading for most of the flight, and she'd been reading, I think she had a Kindle or something that she was looking at. And I had just assumed there was two men sitting behind us. I just assumed that she was with them, but apparently not. So yeah, I can't remember how we got talking, but when we got off and I found Rich again, he was like, were you talking to the person sitting next to you? It's like, yeah, I know, I was. I know, this holiday, I'm talking to strangers. You're reading a book. Goodness me.
What has happened to you two? Yep, I think we both had good holidays, didn't we?
Yeah. And I would say, by the sounds of things, both introvert friendly.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. Which is why I would recommend my holiday to anyone who's listening, who feels that they want to do something much more introverted. And I think you would too.
Mm. Yeah, I would say, especially the first place we were in, you would need a car.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have got there if we didn't have the hire car.
Yeah. I'm glad we did what we did from a ship rather than, let's say, flying to Norway and driving around, because it was, seeing the scenery from the water, I think, was a much better deal than, say, hiring a car and driving around. I think there just didn't seem to be many places to stop. If you needed to, where's the nearest loo? Everything's miles apart here. There's no people. I don't know. Yeah, no, I was glad I had the safety of the ship to retreat to. But at the same time, for me, it was that there was no shoving of anything or anyone. Everyone had space. You're walking around a town, everything's spread out, but nothing's big at the same time. And the locals just, the kids were playing out. They just sat on benches while it was nice. You could get coffees, that sort of thing. It was all there. It was just a memory just popped into my head of two older ladies, and they're in the co-op, and the co-op around the corner from the main door had like a plastic garden table and a little coffee making machine. You'd have a coffee and have a chat with your mate. this their idea of a social club? Just like, okay. Can you imagine me going down to the Asda at the end of the road and asking them for the to put a little garden table in a corner with a coffee machine? Great, I'll talk to my mates here. Yeah, and they were sort of sat next to bags of compost and things like that. It was like, and it was obviously a thing. It's what they did.
Mm.
Yeah. No, I've
Maybe
got.
it's part of that because there's not many people, and as you say, like in the winter, it would be you wouldn't really necessarily want to go and visit somebody, but if you both happen to be going to the shop at the same time,
Yeah,
you could have a
have a quick
catch
catch
up.
up. Yeah, and talk about the
Mm.
weather. Because wherever you go, everyone talks about the weather. It's that's a common language. So yeah.
Yeah, there was some things when we were doing the Orange Farm tour. There was a young family on the tour with us, and I've got a feeling they were from. I don't know if they were from Norway, Finland, maybe. And at one point, so there was a daughter, maybe 6, and then a younger brother. And at one point, the brother just started crying. So we're all kind of like, "Oh, is he all right?" And the mum's like, "Yeah, she's got a stick and he wants it." I'm like, "It's the world over, isn't it? Doesn't matter what culture."
Absolutely. I think we've covered our holiday now. Is there anything else you want to say about yours?
I think mostly I want to say that I feel like I've been shortchanged when I got home. The weather's been horrible.
It has rained, hasn't it? God, it didn't rain this hard in Norway. Really didn't. But anyway, it was a very, very lovely, lovely time. And if anyone wants to comment on our holidays, if anyone's done a similar holiday to us, and you agree with us or you disagree with us, either way, it doesn't matter, then leave us a comment. We're
Or
all
if you have any introvert holiday recommendations.
true. Yes, that would be useful. Very useful indeed. So, yes, so are we done with our holidays for this time around?
I think we are.
I think we are as well. So thanks everyone. Thanks for listening. And we are really glad to be back with you. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks. Bye for now.